First order of business is to pledge allegiance to the flag, and should we do? Please stand and pledge allegiance
To the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the approval of the agenda, and I would like to add one item on the agenda, the introduction of the board here at first. So I would seek approval of the agenda with that addition.
I'll make a motion to. I'll second it.
Yep. Made it, Eugene seconded. Well, to introduce, I'm Louis Ryman. I'm the deputy chair of this organization for the Niagara Committee. The acting chair is away, and I'll let the other people announce who they are.
I'm Lynn Carlson.
I'm Shep Osted.
I'm Eugene Hansen.
I'm Jordan Powder.
Thank you. Now, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Hope you
I
read it.
move that we approve the minutes as written.
I'll second that.
Eugene made the motion and Jordan seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. The minutes approved unanimously. Now we have update of the Board of Adjustment.
There was one petition today, septic. I believe it was in Dakota or Dresbeck once again, and that was approved. Just a setback variance.
Okay, what about this board, the Board has just approved of prime soil variance for Raymond and Linda Yoder?
I don't, did we bring that back up? Okay,
It should be on that agenda.
yeah, that must be. Oh, that was just, that's from the minutes.
Oh, last one, sorry. Okay, now we need the county board. Hearing no update from that, we'll move on then. To the dog kennel background information process, I believe it would be the staff time to come up. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Steve Kranz. I'm an assistant public county attorney for Winona County.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to go over basically what issue exactly you're addressing today and where we are in the process of this issue. Oh, there we go. That's working. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So back in February, the board passed a motion, two motions actually related to commercial dog breeding kennels in Winona County. The first, that's the exact language of the motions. And what I've done is simplified it. The first motion directed the county to work towards prohibiting new commercial dog breeding kennels. And the second one directed staff to explore the possibility of adopting an ordinance requiring commercial dog breeders to obtain a county-issued business license, so separating the dog licensing from land use and handling the oversight outside of that. So basically, the first motion is basically a direction to the staff to go ahead and start working towards adopting a new ordinance that would prohibit additional commercial dog kennels. And there's two paths to do that. One would be to implement a moratorium, an interim ordinance, which basically would mean that you'd kind of do a little pause, there'd be a freeze on any new kennels, you'd study the issue further, have whatever public hearings, do whatever research the board or commission thinks is needed to learn what they need to know about that issue. And at the end of the moratorium, implement the results of the study by either updating the Winona County zoning code, zoning ordinance language, or making a decision on business license requirements. So that would basically be at the end of the process is when the board would actually adopt the new ordinance and go through the process of implementing that amendment to the zoning code. The other option or the other path of carrying out that board vote is to basically say we're not going to study the issue further, that the county feels we have enough information we need. We've been dealing with this issue a long time, and there's no need for a moratorium, and the amendment process can begin to permanently amend the code to address this issue. And then concurrent with that process, the staff would develop a recommendation on the business licensing motion, depending on what the board wanted to do, because it would depend on the nature of the changes they want to make to the zoning ordinance. So what we're talking about today is an interim zoning ordinance, which is authorized under Minnesota law. You've probably dealt with this before. And to start that process of adopting an interim ordinance, the board makes a finding that an emergency exists and that consideration of a moratorium on new conditional use permits authorizing commercial breeding dog kennels is needed to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The board has already voted on that issue and made that finding. So that's what sort of started the process and then brought it before you. So today's meeting is really only about the proposed interim ordinance, whether or not there should be a moratorium and further study before the board moves ahead with the decision it's made. So you're going to be voting on whether to recommend the county board should or should not adopt the interim ordinance. And the core issue really is whether the Planning Commission believes additional study is needed or believes the county already has enough data to move forward with amending the ordinance to ban future dog kennels. That's basically what you're going to be recommending when you decide whether or not to recommend adopting the interim ordinance. And you technically do not have to do that in writing. It could be a vote, minutes are taken, but in terms of your role of advising the board, I believe you should consider making your recommendation in the form of a written resolution that includes any additional information that you'd like the board to know or take into consideration. And of course, as you know, the commission's recommendation is not binding on the county board. So, so basically, that the steps to get to that are drafting the proposed interim ordinance, schedule a public hearing, and then the board refers the draft interim ordinance to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission scheduled to hold a public hearing, and that's where we are right now. And following the hearing, then that's when you discuss and vote on whether you recommend an interim ordinance or not. And then if there's an interim ordinance, the county board could take 1 month or 12 months to study the issue before enacting any changes or making a decision on it. They could renew it after 12 months if they don't have enough information and need to keep going. It doesn't have to last 12 months. It could be 1 month. It's just a freeze during the period that the issue is studied. And then when the board approves a motion to either enact a permanent amendment or decide not to do an amendment, or at the end of the 12 months, whichever comes first, then the interim ordinance will expire. So I also just want to note that existing kennels would continue to operate under the condition of their conditional use permits during any study period. And again, part of what that study could be used for is to look at the impact on these businesses and future businesses as to what might happen depending on how they change the ordinance.
Can I stop you just a minute?
Sure.
What would be that we refer the study of the business to the EDA committee? I was on EDA. We had businesses that they would look at the economic aspects of the dog kennel business within Winona County. Would that be proper to do that?
It could be, yes. I mean, that could be a recommendation you could make that you submit to the board. And the decision, the things that can be studied are not just limited to animal welfare issues. There are other issues that could be explored, the economic issues, the whatever you want to recommend or the board decides they think they need to know in order to make an informed decision on the issue. So it's not limited. Any other questions? Okay.
Brother, sir.
Okay, yeah, that's basically all I have. So basically, you're voting on whether or not the county board should adopt an interim ordinance placing a moratorium on kennels, new kennels, or an expansion of existing kennels while the county studies the issue of whether a permanent amendment should be adopted. Yes.
Do you know when our last CUP request was for a breeding facility?
It's been a while. Do we know? 2021.
2 years.
Yeah, there's no pending applications that would be impacted right now. So that simplifies it a little bit in terms of being able to review the issue without impacting people.
One other question is, was it right in the notes that there was 10 active kennel operations, breeding dogs in the county right now? And there's licensed for 13, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So 3 of them are not active as such.
Right, so because authorizing these through conditional use permits, once you give a conditional use permit, it runs with the land. So unlike a business license or something like that, it is just still out there and active, and the owner of the land could use it. Yes.
I'm trying to recall when we did the review, I think it was a couple winters ago. And statewide, was there, I remember there was about 100, when one had about 10% of the dog kennels in the state. Does anyone?
Yeah, I don't know the total number, but that sounds roughly what it is. They're licensed through the Board of Animal Health and through the USDA.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I guess I have a question in terms of like, what, was there a steering committee or what brought this to the county for, like, why is this the important time for this to be discussed?
This conversation started before I was working here, so I know it's been an issue that's been discussed since 2015 when the first recent conditional use permits were granted, and the reason it's moving forward right now is because the board passed a motion to move forward. And so that sort of kicked the staff into motion to carry out that directive.
And I guess this is kind of a difficult question to answer, but is the focus of this more on animal welfare or just on better business practice?
My subjective opinion, having watched the conversation, is that it mostly has to do with animal welfare and whether the county is able to adequately enforce animal welfare standards in large commercial dog breeding kennels under the current regulatory scheme. Yes.
Speaking of the regulatory scheme, are they not, these kennels, under the Minnesota Department of Agriculture?
Yes,
Or is it the animal or the health department?
it's the Board of Animal Health. And so they are inspected annually by the Board of Animal Health. And as I believe all the kennels have been inspected at least once a year in the past 2 years by the Board of Animal Health.
Have the county received any notifications of deficiencies or violations from any of them observations or visitations of them facilities?
Yeah. So the
Your
interesting,
knowledge?
the interesting thing is, and part of the reason I think this issue is raised is most Board of Animal Health data is not public data. And in order to share it with the county, there has to be a law enforcement reason. And the county can request data and they could approve data, giving data, but they actually have to make a determination on every request. And it's not like how you would expect agencies to share data so that people could stay on top of what's happening in their local jurisdiction. I think in the past few years, there's maybe only been one violation. I don't know that for sure. Maybe it's 2 years or within 5 years or something like that.
You have no documentation or any other form of complaint to bring that to us here, to show us which facility was bad, if whether it was corrected or whatever?
Right. I do not.
And then the other department, the USDA also, if I'm not mistaken, expects these kennels and requires certain vaccination shots if they go interstate. Am I not correct?
The interstate vaccination requirement comes through the state. There's they have to have a veterinarian has to complete a form after inspecting the dogs.
But that's in the purview of the USDA to inspect, is it not?
There is
Or
the,
is it the reciprocal of the
Yeah.
state
well,
that's receiving the dogs?
no, there is, the state of Minnesota, a form is completed for the state of Minnesota when a dog is transported out of the state.
I'm just saying what there is what my understanding is, if they're going to interstate with the dogs, there's a higher level of observation or visitation by the USDA, if I'm not correct.
As far as I know, as long as they submit a form signed by a veterinarian that they've inspected the dog and they're healthy and don't meet whatever medical criteria are needed, then they've met their obligation.
Okay.
And there's no question, there's a comprehensive regulatory scheme for kennels, commercial dog breeding kennels. The primary problem is the lack of information from agencies to the county. And that was one of the things, that was the primary reason that the board made the finding of an emergency, which started this process. And when I say emergency, I'm just using a very narrow legal definition of emergency that applies just to the statute. And so under the statute, and how the statute has been interpreted by the courts and the Attorney General, having a lack of information that helps you make good decisions about carrying out your comprehensive plan and your zoning ordinances can be considered an emergency for having a moratorium so you could study the issue. And so while there definitely is, there's no question there's a complete regulatory scheme around commercial dog breeding kennels, there's very little information that is actually shared about what is happening there. Yes.
Would there be anything in the conditions of the CUPs that we have granted that would allow us to request that information from the people holding the CUPs?
I believe all the CUPs do require allowance that the county can inspect the kennels. I think it's primarily a resource issue as far as prioritizing the different things in the county that the planning department has to put their resources towards. Yes.
I think, Jordan, too, under the findings, number 4, Minnesota Court of Appeals has determined there's a rational relationship between dog regulations and the general health and welfare of a community.
Yes.
And then if you go to number 12, it says we lack access to the data needed to determine what controls are necessary to ensure kennels located in the county are being operated in a humane manner.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is if the conditions we have in place on those CUPs would allow us to request that information from the permit holder.
I think
Or,
we
you
can,
know,
we can get information, but we don't know what the parameters are to determine.
we don't know what information we need.
Well, we can get information from the kennels, but we don't know what the parameters are to determine that we're protecting the health and safety of the community based on that Minnesota Board of Appeals determination. I think that's why we're here today.
Well, something I'd like to know, what conditions are these dangers are they posing to the people, the dog? What diseases do they carry that they're not taking care of? I mean, I know for rabies, they're forced to vaccinate them every 2 years. They will vaccinate them for distemper because they don't want to sell dead dog.
Yeah.
And pyrovirus and all the others, and they'll treat them for heartworm and all the other things that go with it. Who's going to enforce this ordinance?
That would be up to the county board to decide how it's going to be enforced. Again, we have current conditional use permits that have conditions that can be enforced. The allocated resources for the county generally to add resources to handle the existing scheme that we
What
have
you're
is
saying
limited.
is we're gonna have to hire more people and they're going to have to be trained in this matter. Is that, would I be correct in saying that?
No, I think with, and again, this been a little far of the legal issue, but the idea of a moratorium would limit the amount of work that the county has to do because there would be no new additional kennels.
Well, way it is here, you're gonna be inspecting every kennel and you're gonna have to have data or input from these people. That's gonna cause some staffer a lot more work. Is that gonna create enough work that you have to hire another person?
I don't,
I know you're not in human resources,
Right.
but
but
scratching as a taxpayer, it appears that way to me.
well, I would say that it's easier to regulate a limited number of entities than it is to allow entities and have to do more of them. So this wouldn't change the existing, if there was a moratorium, there was a ban on future kennels and expansion of kennels, everything would stay just like it is now, basically.
Well, if somebody wanted to expand, it says they couldn't expand.
Right.
The only expansion would be is they'd have to go, what I understood is they have to change from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's or the Health Board's regulations to USDA's, which are a little more stringent, I understand.
Well, the threshold for being regulated by the USDA and the Board of Animal Health, I don't know the numbers offhand, but they're pretty close in terms of the types of entities that are subject to that.
Well, I'm just chasing the, is there any other
Would you be
questions?
able to discuss a little bit of what that study then looks like when and if a moratorium goes into place? What information are we trying to get? Or are we just trying to, can you speak to some of what the next 12 months would look like for a study?
Sure. So it could basically go a few different ways depending on what the board decides or what you recommend to the board and they decide. It could be as little as one public hearing and meeting discussion where all the information is gathered and reviewed that's been for the work that's been done on this over the last 8 years, and getting all that information in one place, reviewing it and reaching a determination of whether that's sufficient information to make a decision or make a change. Or it could be a whole, series of meetings and public hearings and collecting from information from business owners and animal rights experts and basically as much as the county decides it wants to do. And it would probably be the first step would be figuring out what information the county has and knows already and what it would need to make a decision or know what the ordinance should look like.
Are there any other questions? Being fit, I believe you're done, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have the process.
I guess I would move to open the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Gordon's moved to open the public hearing and Eugene seconded. Is there a motion as such? The people in favor of having the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Now there's a writing that you read on the list over there talking, when you speak, you have to put your name and address. We want to hear that first when you speak. And you're limited to 2 minutes of speech. And I'd like to appoint a timekeeper. Olivia agreed to be it, and I'm appointing her as our timekeeper. She's back there. So who's got the list? And we start calling. If anybody wanted to speak, have they signed on the list? Will Ann Olson please come to the podium?
Hello. My name is Ann Olson. I'm with an organization called Animal Folks. Address 1041 Grand Avenue, St. Paul, Minnesota. We support the ordinance discussion and welcome it. I'd like to address 3 points. 1, welfare. As stated, the ordinance is to protect public health, safety, and welfare. As you know, Minnesota statute section 394.21 provides that authority. It reads, any county in the state is authorized to carry out planning and zoning activities for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Nowhere in state law are animals excluded from the general welfare of a community. 2, lack of data. As discussed, the findings highlight a lack of data from the Board of Animal Health. This is absolutely true. We worked for years to get the dog breeder bill passed into state law. The board has repeatedly denied access to breeder data. In fact, in 2002, Winona County staff did a formal data request to the board asking for dog breeder information, and they were told it was non-public. So if the county does not have timely access to data, you cannot be expected to know what is going on in the kennels. 3 questions. In the last meeting, members asked, what is the problem? Has anything changed? Is the system broken? Yes, yes, and yes. The problem, there are many. 1 pertains to permit conditions. They vary per permit. 3 breeders don't even have dog limits. There's also a lack of knowledge about what do dogs need, dog welfare. Has anything changed? Yes, some breeders have violated federal inspections. 3, a broken system. The county has deferred all animal welfare to the USDA, who is now being sued for ineffective enforcement efforts. The Board of Animal Health, too, was sued for issuing a license to a breeder convicted of animal cruelty.
Time.
Further testimony will be provided. We thank you and ask for a ban on future permits, as well as a review of existing standards for existing kennels. Thank you for your time.
Lisbeth Schuler, long supporter on names. I'm not very good.
Lisbeth.
Lisbeth? Okay, please.
Sorry, it's a different one.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Long, and my address is 351 Pleasant Hill Drive. I am one of many people living in Winona County who absolutely oppose puppy mills. These facilities cage adult dogs for their entire lives to mass-produce puppies for profit, creating physical and mental harm to dogs. This is a community issue. Were you aware that over 900 people petitioned to have these kennels and were submitted to the county? I have 50 more petitions here of people who oppose puppy mills. As you know, these breeding kennels have been granted permits over many years, and the conditions within the permits are not consistent, which is one of the reasons why an ordinance should be passed. Two breeders with permits from 2013 have only two broad conditions with zero limits on the number of breeding dogs. One of these permitted facilities reported 92 adult dogs with unlimited puppy production. Another breeder granted a permit in 2015 has three general conditions and also no limit on adult dogs. In a 2023 report provided by a staff to the commission, some data was also missing. The report stated that the breeders were given a choice whether the staff was allowed to inspect the indoor of the facilities. 4 representatives of the breeders chose to talk outdoors, meaning staff did not see how the dogs were housed or their condition. Was there any follow-up with the kennels to ensure the animals were healthy? And as you stated, sir, Mr. Lewis, that there aren't staff to care for these dogs to make sure that they are being housed in a humane and decent way, which they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Dwayne Wirt.
Dwayne Wirt, 25693 County Road 25, Lewiston, Minnesota 55952. Thank you. I know some of you have visited these facilities and not seen the issues. And have seen these facilities and not seen the issues. Veterinarians have also visited and citations were issued in 2013 according to the Star and Tribune. However, the person managing the facility controls the treatment of the animals. All facilities with animals will be challenged to keep everything spotless all the time. The number of animals is not as important as the management, the person running the facility. Our daughter worked for a major dairy food manufacturing company. This is an example. She brought her team of 13 to our dairy farm one day in the afternoon. They were there for 4 hours. We watched the milking, watched where the calves were housed, watched where the cows were calving, watched the cow calf. They were totally surprised how clean the facility was, the cows. And when they were leaving, they said, "This is not what we were told." They were totally surprised. And they said, "We applaud you for your husbandry and your management of your facilities. However, facilities do have bad days once in a while. A manure pump breaks, in our instance, a skid loader breaks. Once in a while, you have snow loads come down. The facility totally collapses. We have to have very serious reasons to limit the size of the kennels. Let's make sure it is what we are dealing with and not a temporary problem. Our freedom to conduct business, our livelihoods, and our taxes are affected when we unnecessarily limit commerce. We have to focus on what the issue is. Is it the management of the operation? Probably not the size. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Is Alita Johnson? Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you.
My name is Alita Johnson. My address is 104 Main Street, Winona, Minnesota, apartment 116. Thank you. I have testified before about my concerns with these breeding kennels. I believe all animals must be created humanely, but dogs have unique needs. They are companions. Their physical and mental health are critical to their overall well-being. Studies have been conducted documenting harm to dogs from large commercial breeding facilities. 2 well-respected studies were conducted by Dr. Franklin McMillan, who testified before the county board. One study of 1,169 dogs used for breeding purposes showed these dogs, confined for years in kennels, displayed significantly higher rates of fear, house soiling, and compulsive staring. The dogs were always on alert or on edge, skittish, easily scared or spooked, frightened most of the time. sensitive to touch and other issues, which Dr. McMillan explained was due to exposure to stress. Confinement, lack of enrichment, lack of play, noxious smells, temperature extremes, wire cage flooring, inadequate health care, all can be sources of psychological distress, suffering, and trauma. Another study by McMillan dealt with puppies from large breeding kennels. He found these puppies had greater aggression, fear, separation-related problems due to inadequate early socialization. Numerous studies by other veterinarians have also been conducted defining what dogs need, from environmental enrichment, socialization practices, proper temperature, sounds, and more. Not addressing these issues can cause stress, anxiety, or aggression in dogs. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Is it Megan?
Hi there. My name is Megan Helling, and I work with Animal Folks, address of 1041 Grand Avenue, St. Paul. In a 2022 staff report presented to this commission, it states that animal health and behavioral issues fall within the purview of the USDA. We believe animal welfare also falls within the purview of this county. Today, I want to present some information about the USDA. Numerous complaints and lawsuits have been filed against the USDA for lack of proper enforcement of the Animal Welfare Act, which includes the commercial dog breeding facilities. In fact, the Office of Inspector General has conducted multiple audits of the USDA, some with scathing reports, where USDA inspectors, in the words of the OIG, were told to educate breeders rather than cite violations, which cause continued animal suffering. Two egregious examples that you may have heard of in the national news was Daniel Gingrich, a USDA licensed dog breeder in Iowa, and in Vigo, a USDA licensed animal research facility utilizing beagles. These cases were everywhere in the news. The Washington Post in 2019 documented that the USDA cited 60% fewer violations in 2018 from the prior year. In 2024, the ASPCA filed a lawsuit against the USDA for its inept performance. There are currently new federal bills being introduced to try and restore the welfare in the Animal Welfare Act. As for Minnesota, some of the worst animal cruelty cases in our state involved 3 large-scale breeders: Kathy Bach, Dana Bell, Deborah Rowell, all large-scale dog breeders. All were licensed by the USDA. We ask for a ban on future permits and a review of current kennel conditions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is it Andrea? Dopia?
And
Ann? It's Ann? Okay, sorry, I didn't, please.
Hello. I'm Ann Joria, 344 Knott Valley Drive. Most Winona County permits state that breeders shall comply with all laws of the state of Minnesota. Without data from the Board of Animal Health, how does the county know if kennels are in compliance and if the board is qualified in dog welfare and inspection protocols? When the breeder law was finally passed in 2014, there was no place to put it. No state agency qualified in dog welfare. It went to the Board of Animal Health, whose primary duty is with dangerous animal disease. The Board of Animal Health has failed to enforce dog and cat breeder law properly. 1, the board never conducted rulemaking for the law, as was the intent of the legislation. 2, the board granted a license to a breeder convicted of animal cruelty. The board refused to revisit the license. 3, the board denied access to breeder data. The breeder law states there must be adequate staff to observe each animal daily, to monitor their well-being, and the dogs must be provided enrichment and positive physical contact with humans and compatible animals at least twice daily. Is this being checked? How does the county ensure the health of the dogs? These are companion animals. They're not an agricultural commodity for and it's not about the cleanliness of the kennels, it's about the psychological health, the animal welfare. So I urge you to, this is about animal welfare and the inability of the county to properly oversee the care of the animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Karen Riley?
Right.
Riley, okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Karen Riley. My address is 528 East Howard Street, Winona, Minnesota. I oppose these large dog breeding kennels and have stated my concerns for years. Today, I want to share some facts about a few breeders. One breeder, Ada Yoder, was cited for multiple violations in USDA inspection reports. In April of 2023, the temperature in the kennel was approximately 91 degrees Fahrenheit. 21 puppies in 4 enclosures were sprawled out and scattered. They were not huddled up close, which is normal behavior for puppies. The puppies were too hot. Also, 14 adult dogs were overdue on their distemper and parvo shots. Then in August of 2023, the temperature in the kennel topped at 92 degrees. The inspector had to suggest that a fan be set up, and the temperature still stayed above 85 degrees. Also, the breeder was not testing adult dogs for heartworm or fecal parasites. Another breeder, David D. Yoder, was also cited for federal violations. We don't know if he's still operating. His violations were in 2016, 2017, and 2019. In 2019, an American Eskimo dog was euthanized. The medical record showed necrotic wounds, hypothermia, dehydration, and potential sepsis. The veterinarian said injuries had been there for 5 to 7 days. If treated sooner, the dog may not have needed to be euthanized. Because conditional use permits are directed to the property, not the owner. Often ownership of a kennel simply changes hands rather than the breeder being held accountable. Thank you.
Alice Orlowinski, Alicia. Sorry.
My name is Alicia Orlikowski. I reside at 563 Hamilton Street in Winona. Dogs and puppies are not agricultural products. While all animals must be treated humanely, we do not eat dogs and puppies. A survey of the AVMA showed that 99% of pet owners consider their animals to be companions or members of the family. The Human Animal Board, the Human Animal Bond Research Institute documented multiple health benefits to humans from pets, including reduced obesity, reduced loneliness, and support of mental health issues like PTSD. The American Court of Appeals also recognizes the special value of dogs and how they are treated. In 2014, there was an animal cruelty case involving a dog breeder named Dana Bell, who was licensed by the USDA. She was convicted of 13 counts of felony animal cruelty for killing live puppies in buckets of water and drowning her adult breeding dogs. Employees reported her to the sheriff. The defendant appealed her conviction. She argued that her breeding dogs were not pets or companions, that they were livestock. The American Court of Appeals disagreed. They stated in part, each of these dogs, usually referred to as man's best friend, qualifies as a pet or companion animal under Minnesota law. Based on this, ordinary people can understand what conduct is being prohibited. How should man's best friend be treated in kennels? These dogs are living, sentient beings, not chairs, not computers, not economic units. Thank you.
Rita Jensen, is that right? I got one I can pronounce.
Oh, Jessen.
Jensen, okay.
Maybe my writing wasn't so good today.
Oh, that's good enough. I misspoke with the E. It should have been instead of
Good
the O.
evening. My name is Rita Jessen. I reside at 269 East 4th Street. in Winona. Back in 2016, during a hearing for permits, a board commissioner asked the breeders, "Where do breeding dogs go once they are no longer in use?" A representative for the breeders replied, "A dog is no longer a dog after 7 years." A dog is no longer a dog after 7 years? What happens in a breeding kennel that would destroy a dog so much that they can't function like a real dog? For years, I and others have testified about our concern with these breeding kennels. In 2012, a cruelty complaint was filed against one of the breeders in Utica, over 300 dogs at a time. Affidavits were provided with medical records about some of the adult dogs from the kennel. Statements as followed. The Bichon was very frightened and hid in the corner of her cage the entire 12 days I had her. The Yorkshire female was matted from head to toe. Her nails were long and she smelled of feces. The teeth of the dogs were rotting. The poodle was the worst. Her hair was matted 6 inches from her body and was orange with urine. Nothing came of the case. No evidence was collected. No charges. This data was presented during the 2016 hearing granting multiple permits to breeders. There was no discussion of this case. The breeder was granted a permit and operates today. Conditions may change over time, but the fact that these issues are not thoroughly discussed is truly disturbing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this Anita Johnson? That correct? You already spoke, okay. You were here listed 10. Is this Tran Blake? Tran Blake? Or Triana?
Irana blank, last name blank. 557 West Fifth Street.
Someone did step out earlier. They may have departed.
Oh, okay. Did we get Dwayne Word?
Yes,
Yes, we did.
Dwayne.
Okay.
Are there any other people that would like to speak? Are there any other people that would like to speak? For the third and final time, I'd ask if there's any other,
There may also be individuals online that would care to speak.
oh, yes. Olivia, is there anyone online?
Can ask if they want to speak.
Yes, is anyone online would like to speak, please unmute themselves. I will ask again, is there anybody online that would like to speak?
Wendell Dooner.
I'm Wendell Doolman. I live at 1018 East Avenue in St. Charles, Minnesota, 55972. I appreciate everybody taking the time tonight to discuss this and get the feedback. I am strongly against these puppy mills and believe that they are not an agricultural commodity, but companions. And I just wanted to express my support for a ban on any future puppy mills. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online that would like to speak?
Aaron, no, with a D.
Is there anyone else online that would like to speak? Please unmute yourself. If I ask the third time, we're going to close the public hearing. Are there any other people online to speak? I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Eugene moved the motion to close the public hearing and Shep seconded. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed unanimously then. Thank you. The public meeting is now closed. Now, what is our discussion to do?
So just I'm requesting a point of clarification. The two options in front of us today are either to put a moratorium into place tonight, make recommendation for that tonight, or at some time down the road. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, there's that options.
No, I'm sorry. Are those the only two options
No.
that are ahead of us?
So the two options that you're deciding today is whether to recommend the board adopt the interim ordinance, the proposed interim ordinance, which is a moratorium that would go into effect after at the next county board meeting. I think they would have to approve it and publish it. Or the other option is to not recommend the interim ordinance, and you have the ability to transmit whatever information you want to the county board related to your decision.
Well, I believe there's another option sitting in there that we would have the possibility of tabling this motion of recommendation to a further meeting. We've obtained a lot of public information here. There is a situation that I recommended earlier that we could possibly go economically and have the EDA investigate the economic implications of this dog kennels to the county and that it had. And then we'd also have to recover what training the staff would need or what other additional staff would be needed in order to enforce these motions or to enforce this ordinance. And then we've had some information of violations tonight by some of the members that testified, but nobody in the county seemed to have, or the board or our staff has any knowledge of that. So it might be that we need further information from that to make a decision. Then we also have 3 members missing. And with 3 members missing, I believe we should have a full quorum sitting in here. Better to make a recommendation instead of just a few of us sitting here on that. So is there any discussion about doing that?
I have a couple questions first. If some of the violations we heard tonight were correct, would that be grounds to remove those CUPs or take those away?
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming every CUP in this case says that they must comply with all state and federal regulations.
Yeah, yes. I don't know the specific law behind that, but if they violate a condition of their CUP, they can have it revoked. So how it happens may depend on the language that's in the conditions, but I would have to imagine if there was violations of animal welfare law that the county would be able to revoke that CUP.
My next question would be, did they correct the situation that was in there that would warrant the removal of that permit? I mean, we don't have that information.
Right. Yeah, and I think probably that's one of the reasons the county board pushed this forward as an interim ordinance in order to allow time to collect additional information before making a final decision. So that
I would also like to add, there's none of the members of the kennel people that hold these permits here to testify or argue for themselves either. I mean, as a member of the citizens on this board, I have to argue for all our citizens in our county.
And I think the notice of this public hearing went out to the entire community. So if people don't choose not to show, that's not necessarily to their benefit.
Well, how's the group feel about tabling it? Could you?
I move to table this motion.
I would second that. I'd prefer to have more members of the board here, including a county commissioner, while we discuss this.
I feel as though anyone that wasn't here presently tonight, unfortunately, kind of forgoes their ability. We do have a quorum tonight that can come to a conclusion. And any tabling is just kind of, again, allowing some of the more vocal, though maybe not in the majority, to a mounted defense, which may be warranted, but I feel as though given the information that we were presented with tonight, there's a lot to, no one loses anything that they currently have if we move forward with a vote. I find tabling just pushing it a little down the road, not to gain much.
I have a question for our attorney. I just want to make sure I understand what we've been talking about tonight. And I remember you making the comment that if there was a moratorium, it would relieve the staff of some work and expense and time to okay. Louis asked the question about the Economic Development Authority, whether or not this is a
ADA question.
ADA, whether or not it's an economic viable market for our county. But you were saying that if there was an interim moratorium, it would give the staff more room and ability to determine more information for us to get a handle on what is actually taking place at these kennels. Is that?
Well, I think only to the extent that there would be no chance that an additional application would come in or an expansion of the kennel would occur. So it sort of frees the status quo in terms of the workload.
So I agree with Shep. Tabling it is just pushing it down the road. This has been going on for 7 years, even before I started 6 years ago on this planning commission. So I don't know that the people who are absent tonight, they chose to be absent tonight. They've got other priorities. I think we need to deal with the business at hand, Chair.
I guess I just don't understand where 1 year moratorium is going to get us that the past 3 years of no applications hasn't gotten us already. I mean, if we've had time to look into these things, well, people have been upset about it the whole while, and we still don't have any information or the information we're requesting. And I'm wondering what we're going to do differently to get that if we have a moratorium in place. Is it actually going to do anything other than prevent additional permits for a year, which we haven't seen in 3 years anyway?
Well, the statute requires the county to perform a study or hearings if they enact a moratorium interim ordinance. So it would necessarily require something to happen. The other thing I would add is I don't know that tabling the motion would be a resolution for you, because really the board is choosing between whether to adopt an interim ordinance or whether to just move ahead without adopting an interim ordinance. So if you don't provide your input to the board, it's possible they could choose just to move ahead with the ordinance without an interim, and you know maybe wouldn't be able to get your input into the process.
And if we did go forward with a moratorium, that would give us time to study it through an economic lens. There is the opportunity for that potentially. We could see or even request research what profit there is to be made in these, given the ones that currently exist, the 10, if I saw correctly.
Well,
We could request that information.
that's a
if they would
side
care to
issue
proceed.
sitting in there. We could talk capitalism all night sitting there, how this works, but there's a limit to how many can be there that you can put in order to be financially viable. The same thing holds true in farming, holds true in any other industry to how much product you can do, but that's not for discussion right now. If there's no more discussion on tabling, I would like to call for a vote. I believe we should have a roll call vote on this one. Eugene?
I vote for the tabling of the motion.
Okay, Shep?
I do not move towards that motion.
You vote against it.
I vote against it.
Okay. Lynn?
I vote against the tabling.
Okay. Jordan?
Aye.
And as chair, I vote for the tabling. So the motion is tabled.
Thank you.
Seeing no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Eugene moved to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Jordan seconded. We are adjourned.